Maybe you've been training for years. Maybe you're tired of paying someone else's membership fees every month and you think I could run this better. Maybe you've watched a few gyms open and close in your neighborhood and figured the ones that failed just didn't have the right equipment, or the right location, or the right energy. And maybe you're right, but probably you're missing about 15 other things that nobody told you about, and a few of them are genuinely capable of wiping out everything you put into this before you ever get your first 100 members through the door. Here's the thing about the fitness industry. From the outside, it looks almost embarrassingly simple. People want to work out. You provide a space for them to work out. They pay you, you make money, end of story. Except it's not even close to the end of the story. Because the fitness industry in the United States alone generates somewhere around $35 to $40 billion a year, and yet the majority of independent gym owners either break even at best or quietly close within 5 years. And that contradiction between how enormous the industry is and how difficult individual gyms find it to survive is exactly what this video is about. Let's start at the beginning. The modern commercial gym as we know it really didn't exist in any meaningful form until the 1970s and 1980s. Before that, physical fitness was largely tied to military training, athletic programs, or small local weightlifting clubs that were almost cult-like in their membership. Then something shifted. In the late 1970s, Arnold Schwarzenegger became a cultural icon. Jane Fonda sold millions of workout VH tapes. The idea of going to the gym stopped being a fringe activity and became something mainstream Americans actually wanted to do. Entrepreneurs noticed. Chains like Gold's Gym, which had started as a single bodybuilder space in Venice Beach in 1965, suddenly expanded aggressively. Bally Total Fitness emerged. Nautilus built an entire equipment empire around machines designed specifically for the casual exerciser, not the competitive athlete. By the 1990s, gyms were everywhere, and the business model had essentially crystallized into the form it still takes today. Low monthly fees, high volume membership, and a quiet, almost mathematical assumption that a large portion of those members will never actually show up. That last part is worth pausing on, because it's not incidental to how gyms make money. It is how gyms make money. Here's where it gets interesting. A standard commercial gym needs somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 members just to cover its fixed costs. A mid-sized gym, say 10 to 15,000 square feet in a suburban location, might realistically hold 300 to 400 people in the building at one time if it's completely packed. At full capacity, the experience becomes miserable. Nobody wants to wait 20 minutes for a treadmill or circle the weight floor 3 times looking for a free bench. So gyms don't actually want everyone to show up. They sign up 4,000 or 5,000 members, and they bank quite literally on the fact that only a fraction of those people will walk through the door on any given day. Industry research has consistently shown that roughly 67% of gym members never use their membership at all. Some estimates put it even higher. The average gym goer who does show up tends to come most frequently in January and February, and then usage drops off sharply by March and stays low for the rest of the year. This is the foundational economic trick of the gym business. It works as long as people keep paying. And for a while, it worked remarkably well. Then came the discounters, and everything got more complicated. Planet Fitness launched in the early 1990s in Newmarket, New Hampshire, and over the next 2 decades, it essentially redefined what a gym could cost. At $10 a month or $25 for their premium black card tier, they weren't just undercutting competitors. They were almost daring other gyms to keep charging $40 or $50 or $80 a month for the same basic equipment. And it worked. Planet Fitness now has over 18,000 locations and roughly 18 million members. It's publicly traded. It's one of the most successful gym franchises in American history. But here's the problem. For independent gym owners, Planet Fitness didn't just create competition, it reset price expectations for an entire generation of gym goers. Suddenly, someone opening an independent gym in a mid-sized city wasn't just competing on quality or atmosphere or equipment selection. They were competing against a nationally recognized brand, charging $10 a month, often located in the same shopping center. So if you're opening a gym today, you have a choice to make right at the start, and this choice is going to shape every other decision you make. Are you going to compete on price, which means volume, thin margins, and an uphill battle against established chains? Or are you going to differentiate, which means boutique fitness, specialty programming, a premium experience that justifies a membership fee that might be 10 or 15 times what someone pays at Planet Fitness? Both paths exist. Both paths have worked. And both paths have destroyed a lot of people financially. Let's talk about why. If you go the traditional route, a general purpose gym with cardio equipment, free weights, machines, maybe some group fitness classes, your startup costs are going to be substantial. Location is almost always the biggest single variable. Commercial real estate in a desirable suburban area might cost anywhere from $15 to $30 per square foot per year in rent. A 10,000 square foot space, which isn't even particularly large for a full service gym, puts your annual lease somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000 before you've bought a single piece of equipment. And the equipment is where the numbers start to feel genuinely alarming. Outfitting a mid-sized gym properly, we're talking treadmills, ellipticals, bikes, a full free weight section, cable machines, benches, racks, flooring runs somewhere between $150,000 and $500,000, depending on whether you're buying new or used, what brands you choose, and how comprehensive you want your selection to be. Commercial-grade treadmills alone can run $5,000 to $10,000 each. A fully loaded functional training rig from a company like Rogue or Life Fitness isn't cheap equipment you can swap out when it breaks. It's an investment you're going to service and maintain for years. Then you have build-out costs. Most commercial spaces aren't move-in ready for a gym. You need HVAC upgrades, because you're going to have hundreds of sweating humans in a room that needs serious ventilation. You need electrical work if you're adding high-powered equipment. You need bathrooms and locker rooms at a scale that satisfies both health codes and basic human dignity. Depending on the condition of your space, build-out costs can range from $50,000 to well over $300,000. Add it all together, and a mid-size independent gym, not fancy, not ultra-premium, just solid and functional, has a reasonable startup cost somewhere in the range of $300,000 to $800,000. Some will be cheaper, especially in lower cost markets with favorable lease terms and used equipment. Some will be significantly more expensive, especially in major metropolitan areas. But those numbers represent the realistic territory most people operate in. Now comes the part nobody talks about enough, which is working capital. Most gyms don't turn profitable in the first 6 months. Some take 12 to 18 months to reach break-even. During that period, you're covering payroll, lease, utilities, insurance, and marketing costs while your membership base is still growing. Smart operators plan for 6 to 12 months of operating expenses as a buffer, which on a gym doing $50,000 to $80,000 per month in costs means another $300,000 to $600. W0 you need access to before you're genuinely sustainable. This is why so many gym owners who thought they had enough capital discover they didn't. Let's talk about how the money actually flows once you're open, because this is where the gym business gets genuinely interesting and where the difference between success and failure often lives. Your primary revenue source is membership dues. A mid-size independent gym charging somewhere between $40 and $80 per month, with a solid base of 1,500 active paying members, is looking at monthly gross revenue of $60,000 to $120,000. That sounds like a lot until you subtract rent, which might be $15,000 to $25,000 a month. Then utilities gyms are energy-intensive spaces, and monthly electricity bills of $3,000 to $8,000 are common. More in extreme climates. Then staffing. Even a lean operation with a front desk, a cleaning staff, and a handful of personal trainers on payroll can easily run $20,000 to $40,000 per month in labor costs. Then insurance, which for a gym with significant liability exposure runs between $10,000 and $30,000 per year. Then software member management platforms, billing systems, booking tools. Then equipment maintenance contracts, which on a full floor of commercial equipment are not optional. They're inevitable. Then marketing, because in a competitive market, you cannot simply open and expect people to find you. When you add it all up, the margins on a general-purpose independent gym are thin. Industry averages for gym EBITDA margins earnings before interest. Taxes. Depreciation and amortization typically fall somewhere between 10 and 25% for a healthy, established operation. A gym doing $1.2 million in annual revenue with a 15% margin is producing $180,000 in operating profit. That's meaningful, but it's also not the passive income dream people imagine when they picture owning a fitness business. And this is where the business model fundamentally splits in two, because the gym owners doing significantly better than that average aren't usually competing in the same segment at all. They're in boutique fitness. The boutique model CrossFit boxes, cycling studios, yoga studios, HIIT-focused small group training facilities, Pilates reformer studios operates on completely different economics. The price per session is dramatically higher. A single CrossFit class might cost $25 to $35 on a drop-in basis. A boutique cycling studio, like a SoulCycle style operation, historically charged $34 to $40 per class. Pilates reformer sessions can run $50 or more per class in major markets. The space requirements are smaller. A CrossFit box might operate out of 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of warehouse space, often with lower rent per square foot than a retail-adjacent traditional gym. The equipment inventory is more modest. The brand identity is typically much stronger. Boutique gyms sell a community and a culture, not just a floor full of machines. But the boutique model has its own vulnerabilities. Member churn is brutal. Boutique gyms depend heavily on high-frequency, high-commitment members, and those members are intensely sensitive to scheduling, coaching quality, and community atmosphere. If your head coach leaves, you can lose a substantial portion of your membership within weeks. If a competitor opens 2 blocks away with slightly better programming and a slightly more charismatic community, your attendance can drop meaningfully before you even fully understand what happened. SoulCycle is the cautionary tale here. At its peak, SoulCycle was generating hundreds of millions in revenue annually and was reportedly valued at close to $1 billion. Then a combination of overexpansion, leadership controversy, and the rise of Peloton, which offered a high-end cycling experience at home for a one-time hardware cost plus a monthly subscription, hit the brand simultaneously. Locations closed. The IPO plan stalled. What looked like an unstoppable boutique empire turned out to be significantly more fragile than it appeared. Which brings us to the threat that reshaped the entire industry and that nobody fully understood until it was already happening. The home fitness revolution didn't start with COVID-19, but the pandemic accelerated it so dramatically that it compressed years of gradual change into about 18 months. Peloton launched its connected fitness bike in 2014. Mirror launched in 2018. Tonal launched around the same time. By 2020, when gyms across the country were forced to close for weeks and then months, The home fitness market captured something that had never really been available before: the habit of gym goers. Not just occasional users, but dedicated, consistent fitness consumers, the exact demographic that every gym depends on for its economics, shifted their behavior at home and discovered that the experience was genuinely good enough to maintain. Peloton's revenue grew from roughly $900 million in fiscal 2020 to over $4 billion in fiscal 2021. That growth wasn't sustainable in the long term, and the company's subsequent collapse in stock value and business performance has been heavily documented. But the underlying behavioral shift was real. Many fitness consumers now operate on a hybrid model: some home workouts, some in-person gym sessions, and gyms that don't account for this in their value proposition are vulnerable in a way they weren't a decade ago. And then there's the regulatory environment, which most aspiring gym owners underestimate almost universally. Gyms are classified as places of public accommodation, which triggers a wide range of local and federal regulations. ADA compliance is non-negotiable accessible entrances, compliant restrooms, navigable floor plans. Depending on your state, you'll need specific business licenses, health and safety inspections, and potentially food service permits if you're operating a smoothie bar or selling supplements on site. Several states have specific laws governing gym memberships, how they can be sold, what cancellation rights members have, how far in advance you can collect dues. California, for instance, has some of the strictest gym membership contract regulations in the country, and violating them even accidentally can expose you to significant legal liability. Personal training adds another layer. If your trainers are employees rather than independent contractors, and the ears scrutinizes this distinction closely in the fitness industry, you're responsible for payroll taxes, workers' compensation coverage, unemployment insurance, and potentially benefits. The independent contractor model that many gyms historically relied on to keep labor costs low has come under increasing regulatory scrutiny over the past decade. Then there's liability insurance, which isn't optional. People get injured in gyms. Equipment malfunctions. People overexert themselves. Occasionally, things go seriously wrong. General liability insurance, property insurance, professional liability coverage for your trainers, these costs are real and they're not negotiable. And underinsuring a gym is a category of mistake that can end the business in a single incident. Now let's talk about what success actually looks like, because this industry does produce successful businesses. It produces very successful ones, in fact. The gym operators who consistently perform well share a few characteristics that go beyond just picking the right niche. They are obsessive about member retention. In the gym business, acquiring a new member typically costs somewhere between $100 and $300 in marketing and promotional spend. Retaining an existing member costs almost nothing by comparison. A gym with a 70% annual retention rate and a gym with a 50% annual retention rate, all else being equal, are operating in completely different economic realities. The operators who understand this build systems around retention, check-ins with inactive members, personal outreach at the 30-day mark when engagement tends to drop, community events that create social bonds between members beyond just the act of working out. They also understand the value of secondary revenue. A gym doing $1.2 million in membership revenue that also runs a competent personal training program, sells supplements through a retail section, offers nutrition coaching, hosts weekend seminars, and rents space for private sessions after hours might generate another $200,000 to $400,000 in revenue from those channels at dramatically higher margins than the core membership model. These ancillary revenue streams are often the difference between a gym that survives and a gym that actually thrives. The most sophisticated operators think about this from day one, not as an afterthought once the membership base is established, but as a structural part of the business model. Every square foot of a gym either earns revenue or supports something that earns revenue. That mindset changes how space is designed, how staff is hired, and how the member experience is constructed from the first day someone walks in. Franchising is another path worth understanding because it occupies a genuinely interesting middle ground between building from scratch and just becoming an employee. Planet Fitness franchisees pay an initial fee around $20,000 and then contribute ongoing royalties and marketing fees, typically around 7 to 10% of gross revenue. In exchange, they get a nationally recognized brand, a proven operational playbook, vendor relationships that reduce equipment costs, and a marketing infrastructure they couldn't build independently. The trade-off is control. You're operating within someone else's system, and if the franchisor makes decisions that damage the brand, your business suffers for reasons entirely outside your control. Anytime Fitness, which has over 5,000 locations globally, and Orange Theory Fitness, which built a premium group training model into a franchise empire with over $1 billion in system-wide revenue, represent two very different franchise models that have worked at scale. Orange Theory's franchise initial investment ranges from roughly $600,000 to over $1.5 million, depending on location, costs significant capital. But it buys a business with a well-defined model and a track record. The question of what the future of this industry looks like is genuinely complex. And anyone who gives you a simple answer is probably oversimplifying. The data suggests that gym membership in the United States is actually at or near all-time highs in terms of total enrolled members. Over 60 million Americans hold some form of gym membership. But the distribution of that spending is shifting. The mass market segment is increasingly dominated by ultra-low-cost chains like Planet Fitness on one end and premium boutique concepts on the other. The middle, the traditional $40 to $60 per month full-service gym that's been the backbone of the independent fitness industry for decades is under the most pressure. Technology is going to keep reshaping what the gym means. Wearables that track every metric of a workout, AI-generated training programs, virtual coaching, immersive fitness content, none of these replace the weight room or the pull-up bar, but they change what members expect from their in-person experience, and they change what differentiation looks like. The gyms that will win over the next decade are probably the ones that think of their physical space as a hub in a broader fitness ecosystem, not as the only place where a member's fitness journey happens. So, you want to own a gym. Here's where we land. This is a real business with a real path to profitability. And there are thousands of independent gym owners across the country who have built meaningful, sustainable businesses that support their lives and their families and generate genuine wealth over time. This is not a fantasy. It happens. But it happens in the context of an industry where the capital requirements are significant. The margins are thinner than they appear. The competition is increasingly polarized between massive chains and highly differentiated boutique concepts, and the member retention challenge never really goes away. It happens when the person running the gym understands that they're not just in the fitness business, they're in the retention business, the community business, the real estate business, and the labor management business simultaneously. The gym owner who opens with $500,000, a great location, solid equipment, and no plan for how they're going to retain members past February is going to have a very difficult time. The gym owner who opens with the same $500,000 and an obsessive focus on the member experience, secondary revenue, staff quality, and community culture, that person has a real shot. The equipment is the easy part. Understanding the economics of the business you're actually entering is where the work begins.